Here we are the second day. Something was throwing rocks and it was hitting one roof. Everybody would run over there. Then it would hit another roof on a different cabin. They'd run over there. If you think about it now, it's comical, to be running around, like you're going to catch them or something. Anyway, they finally came back and we're sitting down. It's broad daylight. You used to, in the old days, be able to drive in a round driveway to each cabin. Most of it is overgrown and grown back. And there is this one place, we call it the bottleneck, because it is practically the only place you can walk without getting harmed. It's grassy, but it's reasonable. And we were sitting in a semicircle, and there's 5 of us, and we started hearing something walking. And we had just assumed it was a fox that we had been feeding, coming up to see if we had anything to eat, And I'm sitting in the chair that's looking right down the bottleneck. And all of a sudden, there they are.
Kathy, welcome to Bigfoot Crossroads.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you. For my listeners that aren't familiar with the amazing legend Kathy Strain, tell a little bit about yourself and how you got started in this crazy Bigfoot stuff.
My name is Kathy Strain, and I am the forest archaeologist and tribal relations program manager for the Stanislaus National Forest in California. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in anthropology, and been doing the archaeology for 35 years and probably Bigfoot just as long, if not longer. I got into Bigfoot, and actually Bigfoot got me into anthropology, which is really a strange way of going about getting a job. But essentially when I was in 5th grade, let me back up. I saw Legend of Boggy Creek when I was a little girl, and I just fell in love with the idea of an undocumented animal out in the woods somewhere, And in 5th grade, I asked my teacher, what do I need to do to study Bigfoot for a living? And she goes, well, you probably have to go into anthropology. And I said, okay. And so I just was straight on that path. Figured it out pretty quickly that nobody was going to pay me to study Bigfoot. But by then I'm already, in love with the concept of anthropology and archaeology and all that stuff. And so that's how I got into it. And I just really thankful for my parents always being so supportive of all that stuff. Because, when I was young, my family was one that always camped and hiked and stuff. We never went to like Disneyland or stuff like that. We were, national parks, national forests, those types of places. And my dad would indulge me and pretend like what we were really doing is going on a Bigfoot expedition. Of course, I was keen on that during the day, but not so much at night. But anyways, I've been studying Bigfoot for a very, very long time.
That's so awesome, though, that as a child, everybody was supportive of the idea and that you actually followed it through into adulthood. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody that's done that.
Yeah, most people don't even think about Bigfoot until they have sightings.
Right.
And then they want to know more about what it is that they saw and then spend a lot of time trying to get a chance to see it again. And so, I'm the exact opposite of that. So I didn't have a sighting of a Bigfoot until 2012. So you can imagine being and then doing this for that amount of time and I had seen other stuff. I've seen footprints. I've heard noises. I've been yelled at. All that stuff that goes with that. But I didn't have my first sighting until 2012. So that's a long time to, keep hoping.
Yeah.
Hold off.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your time with the BFRO.
Mm-hmm.
That organization has been around since I got involved. And they're still kind of like the main name that comes up in conversation as far as research organizations go. Not that there's not a lot of other great ones, some that you're actually involved with, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be difficult for you to answer, but how is life in the BFRO back then different than what it seems to be now?
Well, back then we were more interested in witness accounts and calling them and following up, trying to find the most recent stuff that we could find, trying to get, if they had hairs or blood or any kind of evidence. And I can't tell you what the BFRO is like now because I'm not in it and I don't follow anything that they do. Doesn't seem like last time I was on their website looking for a report I had done years ago, it didn't look like there was anything really new going on. So I don't know if they still follow up on sightings or not. So, but it does seem like they do a lot of paid expeditions, though. That looks like we kind of sort of started doing that when I left.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the groups were really based around, like you're talking about, witness accounts, people reporting their sightings and then talking with the witness and investigating the property or the location or whatever. And you don't really see that much of that sort of investigation going on now. Do you think research is kind of missing a step by kind of putting the witnesses to the background and just doing their own thing?
I think that is a mistake because one of the things witnesses are good for is time and place, and that will lead you to patterns, and patterns are what we can use to then hypothesize what may be going on in this area at a certain time of year, especially if it's consistent. Consistency is one of those things that's really important because then you can start seeing those patterns. And if you don't talk to witnesses, how do you really know what's going on? And especially if it's in your research area, I think that it's very important to find out where the hot areas are at that very moment in time. If you can get a witness to report it, I saw this yesterday. A lot of times in the BFO, we were getting stuff that was from like 20, 30 years ago, and people just wanted to get it off their chest, kind of thing. Like they've been holding this in for all these years, and now I got to tell somebody what happened, and then they contact the BFRO for that. And so it's a form of therapy, I think, in a lot of ways. But, there's a lot of recent. I just got an email this morning about some stuff that was happening here in where I live, and I hadn't heard about it myself, but generally somebody inadvertently contacts me one way or the other. But even then, this is stuff that happened months ago. And what the email this morning was about something that just happened this week. And so,
oh, wow.
So that stuff is pretty important, to me, is to figure out, first of all, what did you see? What was your experience? When was this? What time of day or night? And then what did you see? Because sometimes, people, I don't do other cryptids. I only do Bigfoot. And so I like to find out right off the bat, what is it that you saw? And then if it ends up being something like Dogman or, I don't know, a ghost or something, then I can go, well, this isn't something that I can deal with. So let me pass you on to somebody else, or thank you for your story, kind of thing. And so, I find that very interesting because I don't have an interest in anything else, and I don't have the brain capacity to be interested in something else. And I just don't. I find it very, very, very unplausible that there are all these other cryptids. And I talked to a class like last week, I guess, and somebody said, well, what about Boogerman and what about blah, blah, blah? And I said, look, those are just local names for the same thing. There isn't room for, 15 different kinds of cryptids in one place. I mean, it just isn't, that's not logical. It's very plausible that we haven't found one or two large or small cryptids, but not 15 or 20. And so it's even if you want to give somebody, well, my Bigfoot is browns and those ones over there are black. Well, that's just diversity. That doesn't make it a new cryptid. It's those kinds of things that sometimes are like, golly, did you guys think this stuff through? And is Dogman really Dogman, or is that just a poorly described Bigfoot, kind of thing? But there's all these other things that, I get asked all the time about other kinds of cryptids, and I just look at people and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Never heard of it. Sounds like it, like it's made up to me. So I don't know about that. So like a wraith, I think I was asked that the other day about what a wraith was. And I said, well, I don't know what a wraith is, and I don't care what a wraith is. So as long as it ain't bugging me, I don't care.
I mean, that's kind of become a thing, though, over the past, 5 years or so. It seems, at least. 20 years ago, it was just Bigfoot. There wasn't anything else. And then every once in a while, you would get a report of where somebody said, well, I saw a Bigfoot, but it kind of had like a baboon snout on it or a muzzle of some kind. And now I think Dogman is actually more popular than Bigfoot on the internet. Ugh. And you've got all these other cryptids that people are talking about seeing. Mothman's everywhere now. It's not just a one-time event at Point Pleasant.
Yeah, there's some called a rake.
Yeah.
What the hell's a rake? And it's just kind of like, where did this all start? And it's interesting because I think Dogman, is fairly recent in time. Isn't that like from the 1980s?
Yeah.
Like with the first one. Yeah. So, it's kind of like there's no precedent for these cryptids. And, who's going to know? Native American people are going to know because they lived with whatever is out in our forests or our natural environments for the longest period of time. And I don't see a description of something called Dogman in Native American stories. There's nothing like that. And so, something that I guess if the world was the world of creativity, a new cryptid you could just pop out of the earth and become something, but somehow, me being a scientist, I'm going to say it's unlikely to be that way.
Whenever it comes to Native American folklore, I would defer to you. You know a little something about it. You wrote a book a while back, Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters, all about Bigfoot and Native American history. And so what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, is there isn't Native American folklore that involves a Dogman or a rake or a Mothman or any of those things.
And not that I'm aware of. I guess I literally haven't read everything possible out there, but you'd think it'd show up, even passively. And so, they wrote their stories are about their natural environment and how to convey the importance of their natural environment to the next generation. Of course, they had oral tradition, and stories that you read were then captured by ethnographers, in the late to early 1800s, some earlier back on the East Coast because Europeans arrived there sooner. And so there's no reason, let me just put it bluntly, they just wrote down what they were told. There's not any kind of, well, I don't believe this, so I'm not going to include it. I'm just documenting what you're telling us.
Right.
And there's nothing like that's even remotely like, there's this thing, the only thing that has two legs and walks upright is the Bigfoot. They have other animals such as eagle, condor, hawk and stuff like that sometimes take human form, but they're still hawk.
Mm-hmm.
There's still eagle. There's still that, bear talks, but he's still bear, kind of thing. And so there isn't anything that to be fair, dogs in general, they've been around a very, very long time. We have very old graves that have dogs in them, so they've been domesticated. And so I would think Native Americans would know what a dog is and be able to say, well, this dog man or this dog with two legs showed up, and there's nothing like that. And so when you think about it, unless you have something that's a really good description of what you're talking about that is much older than modern times, you're hurting yourself because you're making something well, I mean, let me put it this way. If you're interested in it, it's no big deal. But when the internet is overwhelmed with something that's obviously completely made up, that what a gross use of your time to, study something you are never going to experience.
Well, how does the Bigfoot folklore in Native American history compare to our understanding of Bigfoot in the research community?
Well, it's the same thing.
The folklore versus the reality. Are there differences? Are there similarities? Are they describing the same thing?
They're describing the same thing. It's pretty ubiquitous across the United States, Alaska, Canada. There may be different behaviors sort of associated with them. So like in the Yokit tribe, he is a creator and a good guy, and he helps the tribe significantly. Versus other tribes, he's an awful monster cannibal who eats their children. And so did that happen in reality? I mean, it's pretty prevalent. I mean, there's a lot of cannibal stories associated with Bigfoot Native culture. So I suspect that it did once in a while there. And that's how it got, this guy eats our kids and eats things he shouldn't be eating. But the general description, tall, hair covered, throws rocks, beats trees, that kind of stuff is typical of what we think. And so, and I don't know, I certainly know that there are people who have described modern day witnesses saying one was very, very aggressive and ran us out of the area. And this other one, the Bigfoot just, said, hey, what are you doing? Kind of thing. And so you would expect a living population to have different personalities and different aspects of their territory to behave when they feel like they're threatened. And so when a tribe traditionally described a Bigfoot as being hostile, that's, I think, just that particular Bigfoot is a butthead, kind of thing. And that's what I would expect in a living biological animal, is that you're going to have personality differences just like you have in everything else. And so, yeah, they are describing what we call Bigfoot as well.
So you're up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, I'm in California.
How did you end up with the North American Wood Ape Conservancy way down here?
Way down there. Well, in 2012, I had known Alton Higgins and Daryl Collier and all of them for a very long time, in fact, from the BFRO. And so I was speaking at one of the Texas conferences, and afterwards they had been telling me this for years about this place called Area X. And Area X is not some kind of like crazy, ominous place. They had 3 research areas, X, Y, and Z, and Y and Z ended up being duds. And so Area X became the place. And they were talking to me about what was going on down there. And they said, hey, we would really love for you to come down and spend a week there with our members and tell us what you really think is going on. Is this stuff that we're saying really happening? And I said, well, Bob's got family in Texas. So I said, well, we'll just make it a family trip and go spend a week in X and see his mom and dad and sisters and brother and make it a trip, And so I'm now kind of sort of sorry that we went to X before we saw the family, because we weren't really in shape to well, it's a long story, but essentially when we went to X first, the first day was so boring. It was May 2012. In Oklahoma, this is in Oklahoma, everything is trying to kill you. I mean, the spiders are the size of my head.
Right.
There's greenbrier that's trying to pull your shoes off. There's hidden rocks. There's snakes everywhere. And I always say as a Forest Service employee that I've been on every bad road on earth, and I'm not afraid of a road. That road was the worst road. I almost cried. I was like, I don't think we're going to get it back out of here. I think gravity's going to carry us down, but there's no way we're going to get out of here. And of course, Bob's an outstanding driver. So yeah, we got back out. But then the second day, the cabins that we were at, and I'm going to use the term cabin very, very loosely, as 4 walls with a roof. But other than that, it ain't much, you know. And one of these days I got to tell this funny story. But I thought, no, I'm going to tell it next. I'll forget. But the door of the one we were in didn't really shut. And so, because we are who we are, we basically put a door stop up against it. So if Bigfoot decided to come in, the magic rock, we called it the magic rock, would at least alert us to something coming in the door. And I think now I was like, God dang, man, talk about how it's funny now, but you believe me, there are times when I was down there where I was grateful for that rock.
Yeah, I bet.
But it was there. It kind of sort of kept the door shut, sort of. Anyway, so here we are the second day, and all the roofs are tin or sheet metal, and something was throwing rocks, and it was hitting one roof. Everybody would run over there. Then it would hit another roof on a different cabin. They'd run over there. And so it was pretty, if you think about it now, it's comical, because it was like, man, they're just having fun. We were like the television, apparently. And when we know they were rocks, they weren't hickory nuts or anything like that. We were verifying that they were rocks. And I did a little bit, and then I got, this is silly, to be running around, like you're going to catch them or something. So anyway, they finally came back, and we're sitting down. It's broad daylight, so very good, viewing. And there's, you used to, in the old days, be able to drive in a round driveway to each cabin, but that's long past that time. Most of it is overgrown and grown back. And there is this one place, we call it the bottleneck, because it is practically the only place you can walk without getting harmed. It's grassy, but it's reasonable in the sense of, there's not hidden rocks. There's none of that stuff. And so we were sitting in a semicircle, and there's 5 of us, my husband, Bob, Mark, Brian, Ken, and myself. And we're sitting in the semicircle, and we start hearing something walking. And we had just assumed it was a fox that we had been feeding, coming up to see if we had anything to eat, And I'm sitting in the chair that's looking right down the bottleneck. And all of a sudden, there they are. And it was 2 of them. There was a big one and a little one. And by big, I don't mean huge. I'm talking about a kind of a gangly teenager size. And then a small one, like small, I don't know, 6 years old, 7-year-old type of size. And they're coming right at us. And they're walking along, probably no more than 60 feet, if that. Is probably not even that. I know I measured it, but it's not on top of my head right this minute. But they're walking along the bottom of this hillside. So not like a mountainside, a hillside. And like they're going to try to get behind the shed of the cabin. And they're doing this kind of back and forth where it was clear the big one is trying to make the little one not go where it's going. And she I'm calling her, she can't get the little one to follow directions. It's like this Keystone Cop kind of thing where she's going like, no, let's go this way. And no, I'm going to go this way kind of thing. And I jumped up and I said, there they are. And I ran at them. And of course, crazy lady running at us. They bolt up that hillside like they were on a bungee cord. They just went boop, straight up. And I knew I only had seconds to get as much as I could in my mind, all the details I could get.
Right.
And so I was just a little bit behind them. at the bottom of the hill. I didn't try to run up that hill. Oh my God, I would have died. But I got to look at the big one as it went up the hill. And so it had the most beautiful booty, bodacious, muscular, beautiful, thick, muscular thighs. And she put her arms next to her side and like power walked, but more power fly, I guess, or power run. And I didn't pay attention to the little one because it had bolted down and a little even further away from me by that time. So it was like further away from this one. It must be something in their upbringing where, don't run away from something the same way. Try to break up. So, that kind of, whatever's bad will only follow one of us.
Scatter.
Yeah. And so, and clearly the little one was the one, the big one was the one that wanted us to, like, if you're going to follow something, follow us. And anyway, so they just went poof, right at the hill. We didn't see them anymore. We know they got to what we call it the ledge. And then we could hear them walking the rest of the way up to where they needed to go. And so then so of the 5 of us, 4 of us saw the same thing. And the other guy was looking off somewhere. We always like to say he's seen more people see Bigfoot than he's seen Bigfoot.
Oh, that guy.
That guy, because he's always doing some talking or he's doing something. And anyway, so that was the start, and it just got worse. The rest of the week was just constantly having rocks thrown at us. It was just crazy, and it's available to read, and I call it the Ouachita Project, but I know it's Ouachita Project. But it's on the North American Wood Ape Conservancy web page, where you can download this monograph that we wrote about these things that happened to us and other members too. I mean, it's about all the operations. And so when after that week, we got out to civilization. And we stopped, and Bob looked at me and I looked at him, and I was just like, holy crap. We felt like we had just come out of, like, I don't want to make it sound trivial, but, like out of Vietnam, like we just got out of combat. We are finally safe. We can actually sleep and, but the thrill of all of it, it's just like you want to have those experiences again, because it was incredible seeing them, and I want to backtrack it. So for me, I had the impression it was an older sibling that was being tasked with watching her bratty little brother. Mm-hmm. And so that was the impression I had, is that the bratty little brother was maybe intrigued by my higher pitched voice, and was curious about, is there, a small child here or something to that effect. And anyway, so I don't know in particular, but that's what led us to join the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, was to be a part of this organization.
That's a hard sell.
Yeah, it's a hard sell. I was like, well, because it was basically, I want to go back. How do we get to go back? And they were like, well, you have to be a member. And I'm like, we're members now. And so the next year, Bob and I decided to go 3 weeks each, but apart from each other. So he went 3 weeks, and I stayed and watched the kids. And then I went 3 weeks, and then he stayed and watched the kids. And so in his 3 weeks were pretty horrible. I think he could probably tell you that story. Nothing happened at all. And in my 3 weeks, we had all kinds of more. At one point, I got so tired of recording the rock throws that I just said, I'm the journal, the person who writes in the journal. I just wrote, I'm calling it. There's just too many to record, because it was just so. And they were trying to get us to move, and we had a tree pushed down on us. We had, it was just crazy. And yet, and I saw a baby Bigfoot in the trees. It was going from tree to tree. And I was like, and you know how you were in this situation? It happened not so much the first time, because I think I was ready to see a Bigfoot and I was there to see a Bigfoot. So it wasn't that big of a, so I knew what I was seeing versus when I saw the baby, I was like, oh, look at that chimpanzee. Why is there a chimpanzee in the tree? And it's just kind of, you stupid idiot, that's not a chimpanzee, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, it's in the tree, kind of thing. And it's just one of those things that your mind automatically wants to see what it wants to see. I've seen dozens of chimps because I'm an anthropologist and they made us go to the zoo and blah, blah, blah. So, so we did that year. And then the following year, 2014, we went, again, we've been many, many, many times, but that was our last sight. My last sighting was in 2014 when I saw, what we call Old Gray. And he is, he's the stereotypical sized Bigfoot when you want to think about, holy cow, you're huge kind of size.
8 foot tall, 3.5 foot wide shoulders.
Yes. Could blot out the sun if he was between you and the sun kind of size. And made Bob look like a little tiny butterfly up against him. But that's we've been since those times, but we haven't had another sighting since then.
Being from Oklahoma, the Pacific Northwest has always been, the mecca of Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's denying that. I talk to my friends out there all the time, and it's just sort of this halfway a joke, but not really joking. Out in the Pacific Northwest, I know researchers that will spend years and years and years, and like their highlight event was that they found a track or they heard a vocalization. And then you come down here and it's just like, oh yeah, have you seen one this year?
Yeah.
How do you come from the Pacific Northwest to this and then go back to those colleagues and be like, you guys don't understand. These things are like crazy down there.
Well, we thought about for a good while until we had grandchildren of just plain old moving there and just spending all our time, in retirement doing this. But then the grandchildren, that's become kind of tough on us because they're so wonderful. But yeah, it's and I think it's different in the sense of we have the Sierra Nevadas here in California where we have had lots of activity, but never a sighting. We've had prints, we've had them yell at us, we've had all kinds of stuff, but it's so vast compared to what Oklahoma is. You guys don't have the same size of mountains that we have or the same size of trees. It's certainly dense and vegetated much more heavily than most people would even believe. But I think the available habitat, there's plenty of it, but it's not as vast as what we have in California. And so for you to be in the right place at the right time is greatly decreased or increased. It's your opportunity to see a Bigfoot in such a vast environment isn't as likely as a place when you're in Oklahoma or, that piece of Texas, that one place that has a tree.
Yeah, the east side over there.
Yeah, the east side one over there. So
the haystack is much smaller here, is what I always say.
Yes, and so you can find the needle much easier than you can in the Pacific Northwest. And so, I say that a lot, and I encourage people, good place to be, but you can only suggest something so many times, but there's also some issue with, we believe that we need a body. And so we're willing to shoot one in order to get the evidence that needs to be gotten to determine what Bigfoot is and how we can better protect their habitat. And that, in a lot of ways, I think everybody in the Pacific Northwest thinks everybody in the South thinks that way. And so I think that's maybe an influence that they just want to be, what is that? Somebody said it to me yesterday. Your friendly little family Bigfoot, that's your forest friend. That's the word I'm looking for. Or the Bigfoot people or stuff like that. They have a different viewpoint. They're not out to find evidence necessarily. And I'm just saying not all researchers out west, but there's a good number of woo researchers in the Pacific Northwest that are not interested in or, they already saw them in their head. So, that counts. And they see them in their head all the time. So, what do I need to go to Oklahoma for? Because they're living on my property and I feed them and say hi to them all the time. So, and so I just tell my story, and you want to know more than that's fine. But I've given up on trying to talk sense into people. But, you have to, and to be honest, I actually talked to a researcher like over the summer who actually doesn't really want to see one. Wants the Bigfoot,
okay.
Likes the experience, but really doesn't want to see one. Huh. And so I didn't realize that. I made the assumption everybody in Bigfooting is there to have an experience. And no, I guess that's an assumption on my part. That's not everybody's in it for the same reasons.
How did it affect your research after you saw one?
Well, we never shut up about it for a good 6 months. We sat out in my garden every night for at least 6 months, if not longer, reiterating everything to each other. It was pretty and this is actually going to be a funny story. So Bob had a friend. He was a psychologist for college, and he was interested in Bigfoot, but I don't know necessarily if he believed in it or not. But he was so intrigued by our experience that he invited us to San Francisco. And I'm going to tell you, it takes a lot for me to go to San Francisco because I hate that town. Everybody, just like Oklahoma, everybody there is trying to kill you, either with their car or something. I mean, the worst drivers in the history of the world live in San Francisco. So anyway, so we go to the guy's office, and he goes, okay, so tell me what happened. And so me and Bob just go, bleh, and just spew it. 15 minutes later, he gets up from his desk, grabs his coat and his hat, and he goes, you guys can stay as long as you need to, but I got to go. And he just walked out of the room. We watched him walk down to his car, get in his car, and leave.
Wow.
And I was like, what? We came all the way here because he wanted to talk to us and assumed to ask questions or whatever. Nope. He just left. And I was just like, and that guy didn't even talk to Bob again. Oh, I don't even know how long, like 4 or 5 years went by before he kind of talked to him again. So it was kind of like either we absolutely blew his mind away and he could not deny what we saw because we're truthful people, or he thought we were completely crazy and didn't want to have anything to do with us. We don't know. He said nothing. And so I think in a lot of ways that changed our research going forward of at least for the first few years after that sighting, that it was very intense. Bob was inventing new equipment, to take with us. Like this would be more convenient if we had this, and this, and we could do it in this order so we could be faster, blah, blah, blah. And, and that kind of, we calmed down a little bit in that sense of like, okay, we don't need all these things. We can actually go fairly light into the field without all these gadgets or whatever, it depended,
right.
Because our goal is pretty simple. So anyway, so yeah, I would say it didn't change our mindset in the sense of we were always pro-kill, even when we first got together. And so that wasn't that kind of thing necessarily, but it definitely changed our aspect on these guys are just not going to stand there and let us take a shot at them. These things are fast, ungodly big. When you first see them, you're like, holy crap, they are built for the environment. I mean, they have an advantage over us greatly. I mean, I don't know that anybody's got more powerful muscle structures than them, because they do. I mean, they must walk 10 miles a day up and down that terrain, kind of thing. And I think it just made us up our game, I guess is the best way to say it. Is that this isn't, no wonder nobody's gotten a body, because it's unexpected when you do see them. And all of us had a gun that day. That all five of us, the four of us who saw it, all of us had a gun. But of course, I blocked the way, because then I'm running at them. I'm not even thinking about it. I guess what my idea was, they were just going to stand there stunned that this crazy lady was running at them, and I was going to be able to grab some DNA before they killed me. That's where my mind was going. And but definitely upped our game in the sense of these are powerful animals adapted to the environment, and we are poor substitutes for that. And so we have to up our game by getting better at what we want to do. And, so that's how we changed. It didn't change, we certainly didn't change going, oh my God, Bigfoot is so fast. He must not be an animal. He must have floated up that hillside. No, there wasn't any of that. We knew what we were seeing was flesh and blood, and so that never changed.
So you were already convinced of their existence before the sighting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've always been a believer, because By God, Legend of Boggy Creek was a documentary. It was not, a fictional movie. And don't you tell me anything different.
Are you more open to stuff you find in the field because you know that they're real? So there is a good chance that they made that limb formation, or that it really is a track or whatever?
I am honest in saying that I used to make fun of people, not to their faces, of course, who said that I saw the Bigfoot and it was keeping up with my car. That I believe that now. And so that changed my mind about that. And it also changed my mind about, people would always say, well, I didn't even hear him coming, kind of thing, because although we heard them walking towards us and heard them as they were doing their little Keystone cop routine, the second they went up that hillside, there was no more sound at all. I mean, it was just like they had, pillows on their feet or something. And I don't know how they're capable of doing that, but I believe it now when people say, yeah, that they were quite, I always believed in rock throwing because tribes had said that, but I didn't know they were so stinking accurate. I did have one rock. I could hear it coming through the trees. I'm lucky I moved because it hit the cabin wall instead of hitting me. But I actually think that was an accident. So I think they're actually very, very accurate at that throw, and they've done it enough times. And I think it's part of maybe how they hunt, maybe, because it's awfully accurate. And one time we had a rock. First thing in the morning, Bob is outside, and it's just me. When we request to go in there by ourselves, we're allowed to do so. We're one of the favorite teams. So if we sign up for a team, everybody wants to be on our team. But we have been in there by ourselves on multiple occasions. But one morning, Bob had gotten up before me, and he was standing outside. He was just doing a little metal detecting, trying to pick up some nails that had fallen on the ground. And not metal detecting, I'm sorry. I mean magnet, using a magnet to pick up nails. And I got out and come outside, got off the porch and said, hey, honey, how you doing? And I had just sat down in my chair when we heard the rock coming. And we're both looking up at the same time, like, oh, there's a rock coming. And it hit the absolute end of the roof edge and then popped off and landed right in between Bob's feet.
Wow.
And so that had to be intentional. I don't see how that couldn't have happened. Just an inch one way or another, it would have hit him in the head. So and if they had wanted to, they could have done that. I mean, they could have easily overwhelmed Bob and I. If there's two or more of them, they could take us easily, So I never had the impression they wanted to hurt us or anything like that. But so that accuracy, when people had said that, I have many witnesses stories where they've said, well, they just got encircled. These rocks were coming in, and eventually there's like this circle around it, but none of them hit them. And I was always sarcastic in the sense, well, statistics would say, that's one would eventually hit you, if blah, blah, blah. And so I don't believe that anymore. I think they know what they're doing, and they can basically, if we could shave them and put them on the Dodgers, we would have a really good picture. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of my very early experiences years ago was sitting in a campsite that had one of those metal lantern poles that they, mount into the ground and everything. And it's kind of like a shepherd's cane, and little rocks dinging off the pole, watching them ricochet off the pole while we sat at the campfire. And my mind just like blown. There's got to be somebody out there. But if it's a person, how are they that accurate?
Yeah.
And then I just talked to a couple of doctors recently on the show that had an experience where green pine cones were thrown and just landed right by their feet. I can't remember how far away they said it was, but it was quite a distance. They didn't see who was throwing the pine cones or anything.
Yeah.
But it was just like a barrage of pine cones, and each one landing right by their feet, never hitting them, but landing right by their feet.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, the one last thing is I heard that samurai sound that you hear on the Sierra Sounds. We heard that in the first trip. And so having heard that myself, that definitely changes my opinion, because once I heard it, I have then flashbacks of things I have heard in the past, but I didn't know what it was. And I realized I've heard this before in the forest. And I know Ron Moorhead and Al Berry, and so I never doubted their truthfulness about what they experienced, because that happens to be on my national forest where those recordings were taken. And but I didn't put much stock into it of like, what is it? Animals babble. When a monkey or a chimpanzee gets handed a treat, that they react emotionally to it, kind of thing. And so I don't believe that it's a language in the sense of that, but I definitely had a sense of what the Bigfoot was feeling when he made that, because he was very frustrated. The sound of his voice was frustrated. It was starting to be daylight, wanted us outside. We were not reacting to the hundreds of rock throws that are landing on the cabin. We're trying to get some sleep, kind of through it. And it was kind of like, if you don't come out, I'm going to tear this wall down. And we were like, no, we don't really care anymore. That magic rock. We've got the magic rock. Keep us safe. Yeah. So, I mean, in that sense, yes, I now believe when somebody tells me, not like supernatural stuff, but if somebody says, I haven't heard anybody say this, but if they said Bigfoot picked up my metal beam and bent it in half out of frustration, I would probably go, ooh, I want to see that beam. I believe you. I truly believe Bigfoot can do some serious damage to something, or, all those tree breaks that you hear about, they have the power to do that kind of stuff. And so yeah, in the sense, it made me more open to non-supernatural abilities that Bigfoot is capable of.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. From a scientific aspect, it's impossible, to me at least, that everybody talking about paranormal stuff in relation to Bigfoot is lying. So where are these beliefs and claims coming from?
I'll tell you my opinion. I think that we're dealing with wishful thinking to some extent, and I think a misinterpretation of what they are seeing. For example, so we had a wildlife biologist on my national forest who saw a Bigfoot. Not only saw a Bigfoot, basically he was walking, and this is a hot Bigfoot area anyway, even back then. He was walking back to his truck, proof that Forest Service employees actually get out of their truck and actually do work, but was walking back to his truck when he came across a deer that had a broken back leg and was dead. And he went, wow, and for him, of course, he's like, be on alert. There's an animal out here. They just killed this deer and probably wants to come back and get it. Keeps on walking. And then he comes across another deer that's alive, but it's just standing there shaking, standing there so, mesmerized by something that he walked up and was able to touch the deer itself. And he's like, what? This is weird. And so he noticed where the deer was looking, and he looks up towards where the deer was looking, and there's the Bigfoot right there. And he gets full, can describe it, everything. And then he said it just disappeared. This is a wildlife biologist. And so I was able to it happened just like 2 months. Anyway, he went back to his office and quit because that's too much for him, out of his world view there.
Yeah.
So this happened like 2 months before I got there. And so I was able to call him up and I said, hey, I want to talk to you about this. And he says, all right, I'm going to tell you, but if you don't ever call me again, kind of thing. And I said, what do you mean by disappeared? I said, do you mean literally disappeared? And he goes, no, that was a bad choice of a word to use. I mean, I just couldn't see him anymore. I said, well, explain that to me even further. Because, well, I think he went behind the tree, but I didn't see him go behind the tree because I was in such shock at what I'm seeing. I was trying to process it all. And then his next thought, it's not there anymore, kind of thing. But he didn't actually see it leave. And I think that is more or less certain things that are happening is when, like, again, if I knew then what I know now, I'd think differently about it. But when I was, I used to live higher up in elevation, but I got sick of the snow. The thought of shoveling snow today, I'll even move again if I have to. I was going to work early in the morning, and I looked. We had one of those kind of luge kind of driveways, the kind where if you go too fast, you're going to shoot across the road and you're going to hit your neighbor on the other side. So I had come down, and I'm waiting to turn onto the main road. I'm looking. We had a blind corner, and I look across into my neighbor, and I see a black trash bag full trash bag sitting right in the middle of his driveway, and right at the entrance. So nobody would able to come into his driveway or out his driveway without moving it because it was right in the middle of it. And I went, that's really odd. I didn't think today was trash day. And I'm thinking it through. And I said, no, trash day is going to be tomorrow. I don't understand what's going on. Anyway, I'm not really caring about it. And I'm looking and I see, okay, I'm free to go. And I go to turn to get on the road. And I look over at the driveway and that bag's gone. And I'm going, what the heck? And so I braked and I'm looking as kind of thing. And I'm looking around like, what just happened, kind of thing. And so, I keep this on my mind. And I'm going, no, I know today's not trash day. And he has a can. Why would he put just a trash bag, a full trash bag, not in a can? Our garbage people wouldn't even pick that up. It has to be in the can. And had I thought about it more, even though even then I believed in Bigfoot, but I didn't know that maybe they could make themselves look like something common. And so I think that was a Bigfoot because we had Bigfoot activity in that area. In fact, that was where we heard some howls, and then we found, it's a long story, but that's how we found some evidence that we call Big Hill evidence. And so I think that is what may be the cause of what people are calling paranormal, is that you're expecting XYZ and instead it becomes ABC, and you're interpreting it as being something when it's not. It really is just your mind working through the situation to keep you calm, keep you from fight or flight, keeping you from going into shock, keeping you from all these processes that our body senses, kind of thing. For those that have, he speaks to my mind, we all know what that is, kind of thing. But yeah, I think I'm more intrigued with the disappear kind of supernatural kind of thing, because it either can or it can't. And there's no other animal on the planet that can just disappear, but they can camouflage themselves.
Right.
And so is that a possible explanation kind of thing? And so I think they're logical, but when they start getting, the full on crazy crap, that's a psychosis. That there's nothing we can do with that, because Bigfoot cannot come into your house as an orb and reappear and for you only. That just doesn't happen. So that's what I think.
If they can, a lot of us have wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, we should have just been doing that mind speak of, come on, Bigfoot, can you come on out and just show me your bill, and then I'll be done and I'll be happy and I'll leave you alone. I won't try to kill you after that point, kind of thing. You think if they had that ability, and they, in Area X, all of us had guns. They, we were routinely, Daryl took a shot at one, so they had the ability to mind speak to us and say, hey, we would appreciate it if you not try to kill us. You think they would have done so?
Which they've reportedly done with other people, who were armed. They've, reportedly mind spoke to them. Why do you have that firearm with you? Don't bring the gun with you, and things like that.
Yeah, because they know what a gun is,
Yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down.
Yeah.
Years ago, you and I were part of this group called the Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers.
Yeah.
And I could be getting my memories completely wrong. I hope I'm not. But I remember you sending me a photo asking me my opinion on the so-said photo. Are there secret photos and videos that you've seen that are just mind-blowing that don't get released to the public?
I have seen one. People just don't want to get involved. Have you met our community?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, once or twice.
Would you want to get into an argument whenever? But I know that there are indeed videos that are indisputable out there that people don't want to share because they don't want to deal with publicity, certainly don't want to deal with the Bigfoot community, certainly don't want to be told they're liars and hoaxers, even though you can easily, nowadays, I'm on a television show called The Proof Is Out There on every Friday night on the History Channel. Just want to get that plug in there.
Yeah.
But we have a guy that can analyze any photograph, video, and tell you exactly what happened in that video by the metadata.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a video, this guy will call you out on, this is a hoax because you did X, Y, Z. And he can even measure to see if it's a suit and all this stuff. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. And so I think these would definitely pass the muster in those. As I'm told, like I said, I've only ever seen one. But no, just you can look at it, but I'm not going to talk about it, kind of thing. And I understand it. They're fearful for what, they don't want PETA come into their door, like, why'd you take a picture or video of this or whatever, whatever the perceived wrong is, somebody out there is going to be pissed off about it and make threats and all that stuff that goes with it. So I don't blame them. But I also have to say, you can stay anonymous. We could do this because you're not helping the animal at all by keeping this information to yourself. I mean, what if this video proves Bigfoot's real and we don't have to kill one? What if this does this and then we don't have to do this? And so, yeah, I think those things exist. I think the government know Bigfoot exists and maybe has one already. I don't believe our government can do anything correctly. I don't think so, but I do believe there are people out there that have a lot of evidence that just are in a spot that they're not interested.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard very strong claims before as well. And then whenever I, was privy enough to have the information shared with me, the evidence shown to me, I took one look at it and was like, yeah, this is completely bogus. Like, so I think it's, kind of a double-edged sword there. But I know that there are rumors, at least, of some videos and photographs that are out there that, just like you're saying, they don't want to be shared, but they're pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, for example, that casino that got a Bigfoot on the security cam.
Yeah.
That you can measure him, and he's you can see the lamppost, you can see the height of the lamppost. But for me, you think it'd get more people to come to your casino, but they didn't want the bad rap. They didn't want the reputation for that, or weirdos coming there to do Bigfoot research or whatever. And so I always heard the tape was destroyed, but I recently been hearing stories that it is not destroyed.
Would you destroy the tape? Just saying.
I couldn't destroy that tape.
No, there's no way. I was going to ask, have you seen anything on The Proof Is Out There that you think is authentic?
Yes, I have. I analyzed a video. We're on season 5. We're filming it right this minute. And Cliff Bergman's on it, and Ken Gerhard. And so it's a good show. But the first year I got a video of a small Bigfoot that this lady just happened to be filming, and she kept going, "What is that?" And you can just see it poking its head out right at certain times, trying to see if the lady's still there. And I believe that was an authentic video. I mean, it was pretty compelling of the size of the animal, what you could see. I mean, it never really fully came out behind the rock, but you certainly get a good sense. And then, I kept thinking the entire time I'm watching this, run out there, lady, just take your flashlight, run out there, be like me. Because, and that's one of the funniest things that I was like, something it's just right there. Well, then go over and part the bushes and see what it is, kind of thing. The worst that can happen, you'll die.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
But you're recording it, so it's fine.
Yeah. You'll get it. It'll be the spectacular, most disgusting video of your arm being ripped off, but at least we'll prove Bigfoot lives,
Yeah.
But, there's been some other videos where I have thought, oh, wow, that's pretty tough. But a lot of times the videos, I always like to say a real animal moves like a real animal in its environment. So if I'm the animal of my house, and I should be able to move through my house like I know what I'm doing, right? And we get these ones where they're supposed to be, well, first of all, don't believe anything that comes out of Russia. So
right.
All those videos are every one of them. And they're talking about Yeti. Wouldn't it be cool if we saw a Yeti right now? Because I always want to know what is, even if it's in Spanish or whatever, I get it translated, because that's the telltale of what they're talking about. And this Yeti is just trying to cross the road, but he stumbles and falls due to the snow. And you're like, oh, come on. If you try harder, you people, this is just not reasonable that a Yeti wouldn't be able to walk through the snow in his own feet and skin. It's stupid.
This is not intended to be a shameless plug for myself, but on the Facebook page for the podcast, I post a lot of video clips that I put out there just to see people's reactions. I don't necessarily give my opinion one way or another. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'm completely convinced that the video is a hoax, but I go ahead and put it out and just, let the person decide for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I am always just really astonished at how many people believe a lot of the stuff that's out there is just completely real.
Oh my God. Really?
There was a video I just posted recently, and I'll call this one out. I don't care. It was reportedly taken in Tennessee. This guy films a Bigfoot in Tennessee. Oh, look, it's a Bigfoot. What is that? Oh my God. And this one did make it to a television show very similar to the one that you're on. Mm-hmm. And the experts weighed in on it, and there are, I noticed maybe it's clever editing, how each person's testimony, each expert, evaluation was just them talking about things and not necessarily saying if they think the video is real or not.
Mm-hmm.
But this person that filmed it has been a guest on some major podcasts after he filmed it. And like the video went viral and everything. And it's literally, if you Google Bigfoot costume, it's the first costume that pops up in the images. I mean, like, it's obvious what it is. And I'm just like, how do people even believe that this is real? I mean, it's out of focus, so you can't prove that it's the costume, but you can tell it's a baggy costume and it's the same shape and coloration and the face shape. Everything about it's the same. Like, I instantly recognized it. But I find, like, the Russian video that you're talking, I know the exact video that you're talking about. Sonny Vader on YouTube, who's been making Bigfoot videos for years, of a very large man in a ghillie suit. People just eat it up. It's like they want to believe. They want it to be real because they don't want to go out into the woods, but they want to see one so bad that they're willing to almost convince themselves that what they're looking at on the internet is real. And it blows my mind. Things didn't used to be that way.
You're right. It didn't used to be that way. And it's kind of sort of like aliens, like that ancient aliens. I'm not saying it's an alien, but it's an alien. And it's kind of like, oh, come on. Everything in the world can't be explained because aliens did it. And I find in a lot of ways it's kind of insulting because you're like, you mean humans couldn't build the pyramids? Just not capable of doing that? Is that what you're trying to say? So anything tough to do had to be done by aliens? And so, but there are people who just eat that stuff up. And I'm like looking at them like, are you eating this up because it's entertaining? Are you eating this up because you actually believe aliens built the pyramids? And, I don't know. I don't actually know. I don't really ever get an answer out of those people. They just go, well, like, no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't care if you watch it for entertainment, but surely do not watch this stuff because you believe it's a real representation of history, because it's not,
Right.
So, yeah, it does seem to be much more prevalent than not even all that long ago. Didn't seem to be.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago at all.
Yeah.
So what future projects do you got coming up? Squatch Fest is coming up. You're speaking at that, I believe.
I'm speaking at Squatch Fest, filming. The proof is out there. That's really all I have because it takes up a lot of my time because I actually have to learn new information and keep it in my brain long enough to talk about it. And that's a lot of work. I don't know if you know that or not, but right now that's all I have on my calendar because we're heading into a new year, and really my work schedule hasn't really allowed me to do a lot because my national forest is hot on the. That's not a very good word to use. We are moving to reduce fuels. We are the #1 fire shed in the entire United States, predicted to go up in the next catastrophic wildfire. And so we have homes intermingled in near forest lands, and we're trying very, very hard to quickly remove these fuels so we do not have that situation like what happened in Paradise and other places in this nation. And so that's kept me pretty occupied the last couple of years. Well, we have made a tremendous amount of progress, but, we'll get there and free my schedule up where I can do, in a lot of ways, I love doing talks and I love seeing friends and, doing all that kind of stuff. And I wish I could do more of it, but, until I retire to Oklahoma, I have to make my work fun balance a little bit different, more work than anything. So,
well, Kathy, thank you for taking the time to join me and share a few stories and a few thoughts on this crazy subject that we've been having our noses buried in for so long. Jeez, I feel like a drug addict.
I know, but then I love it in the sense of, I mean, it's essentially, such a huge part of my life. I mean, I wouldn't have married Bob. I met him at a Bigfoot conference.
Yeah.
So that's a huge, big deal that we both had this common and met it right at the right time kind of thing. But it's just part of my life in a way that's probably different for other people in the sense of I wouldn't even be who I am. I wouldn't be Kathy Strain without Bigfoot. It's helped me become the better version of me, because God knows what I'd be. I mean, what Chupacabra? What would I be doing? I don't know.
If you've had your own run-in with Sasquatch or something else you can't explain and you'd like to share that story, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.